It's October, motherfuckers. Happy Halloween. What is up, everyone? My name is Donna, aka Karen, aka the host of the Texocity series presented by the 210 Culture podcast. How you doing? So I bring you a treat for the month of October. I will actually be uploading pretty much every Wednesday and every Friday of the month. I will be actually reading stories from reddit.com. For those who do not know, reddit.com is a forum filled with anything and everything that you can imagine. Every topic in the world is on here. And one of them, of course, is a spooky factor. So I'm on many forums for spooky stuff and decided that some of these stories are pretty good that I just want to read it out to you guys. And if you are a beginning listener of the 210 Culture podcast, you may know that for the month of October, after we were done discussing topics, I would read a story from reddit.com. Kind of want to bring that back. And these stories that I will be reading, I will be posting them on Facebook, IGTV, and YouTube. So feel free to get spooky. Just sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. So this is from Reddit Ghost Stories. It was posted by Ugly Lumber Co. And the title is called It Crawled Into Bed With Me. Ooh, scary. So when I was about 17, my family had just moved back to Canada from living in the USA. It was a bit sudden, and being a family of 6, it was a little bit of a scramble to find a place to house all of us before the snow hit. So my mom and dad decided to live in an old house that my grandpa had on his property, just for the duration on the approaching winter ahead. The house was my great uncle's, and my grandpa skidded from his brother's property to his place. Now my grandpa has 2 quarter sections, and this house is tucked way back away from his main house. So the power is ran from the main house, and with it being so far away, there is no running water. This house is old, so to add to the no running water, there is also no heat. Only a wood stove, just to give you an idea of we were living in. Me, being a 17-year-old, I often stayed in town. I didn't stay there very often, not just because it was a pain with no water and heat, but because shit was creepy. I specifically remember the first time it happened. I was in my bed. I was the only one who would stay downstairs. With the wood stove, everyone wanted to sleep upstairs since it was warmer. So I was just starting to fall asleep, and I started to feel the room getting really heavy. I remember the feeling of not being alone. The doorway didn't have a door on it. It only had a beaded curtain, and I could feel it standing there. I then remember having the feeling of total fear rush over me and frozen to my core with it. Then it moved closer, and I felt the bed move and someone crawl right up beside me. Not in a way that was super noticeable, but in a sneaky, slow, sloth-moving type of way. I specifically remember wanting to vomit with fear. Then I felt it. The feeling of an unshaven face rub against me. I lost my damn mind. I scrambled out of bed holding my blanket and ran up the stairs to my parents' room. I was so out of my mind with fear I couldn't scream. I slept on the floor on my dad's side of the bed. The next morning, my mom was wondering why her 17-year-old daughter was curled up at the foot of their bed, and I told her what happened. Later that morning, we walked over to my grandpa's house to have breakfast and go chat. My mom brought up my wild story. My grandpa and grandma silently listened, and as my mom was laughing at the last bit of the story, my grandparents got really serious and turned to each other. Apparently, this has been an issue in the old house, and they didn't want to tell us, hoping if we didn't acknowledge it, then it wouldn't bother us. I can honestly say it didn't feel angry or upset. It just wanted to cuddle. I didn't stay there much after that. I moved in with a cousin in town. Fuck that. Hell no. No. So I'm also going to be reading another story, and this one is also on Reddit Ghost Stories, and it was posted by Saxophone, like saxophone. This one is 5 months of hell. Hello there. Nice to meet you all. I posted this story of mine years ago on a paranormal website called Paranormal 360. Do y'all remember that website? Because I don't. Which is now unfortunately closed down. My post had the most views on the website and thought I'd post it here for you all to read. If any of you have any questions at all, feel free to ask anything. Apologies if there's any spelling mistakes. I have a few more experiences that I can write about, but it's only minor little things. This story you're about to read is by far the most scared I've been. My 5 months of torture. Before I start this story, I'd just like to explain a few things. Since my nan's death and the hardships I faced growing up, I've always felt my nan with me. From about 1819 onwards to present day, she helped me in little bits here and there. Because of her being with me, I feel sensitive to other spirits around me. I'm not saying I'm a medium and should be on most haunted, but I do sense a lot of things. I don't see spirits in general, but I see them through my mind's eye. It's like a visual representation of what my eyes don't see. If I mention the mind's eye through anything of what I wrote you, you will understand where it comes from. Please, if you have any questions about this or anything I've wrote, feel free to comment. I will elaborate on anything you want to know. At the age of 23, I moved out of my nan's house. It was a very sad but happy moment for me. I was finally getting on with my life, moving forward. As my life changed, so did my 5-year relationship with my partner, which just ended. The house I moved to was a decent size. I couldn't tell by looking at it from the outside though. It was longer than it was wide. From the door, the hallway led up to the bottom of the stairs with 2 doors on the left-hand side. The door closest to the front door led to a small front room, and the second door led to a bigger middle room, which was an open plan combined with a small kitchen. There were 2 doors in the kitchen. The one on the left led to the garden, and the one on the right led to the bathroom. And the only toilet was in the bedroom? Yeah, I don't know. Because it says the only toilet was in the bathroom. Well, no shit, Sherlock. Yeah, that's probably where it should be. But they probably meant in the bedroom. The first day I moved in was amazing. I never felt better. While John, the homeowner, was out, I decided I'd wash all the new cutlery and plates in the sink. While doing so, I heard footsteps from the hallway. I froze for a split second to take in what I heard, and the footsteps carried on to about halfway up the stairs and stopped. I could feel the hairs on my body stand on end. I felt this sudden feeling of dread, and it was really uncomfortable. I shouted, "John!" No answer. I knew there wouldn't be an answer. After all, nobody came in through the front door. Nonetheless, I checked all 3 bedrooms. Nothing. The house was silent, and I still had this feeling of dread. I carried on with the washing up, trying to forget about it, and about half-hour later, John came home. Everything was okay for a while. I had feelings of dread every now and again, but it was tolerable, nowhere near as much when I heard those footsteps. Say, 2 months down the line, when the dark nights were drawing in, I was lying on my bed with my new partner. She was due to go home in about 15 minutes as her dad was picking her up. She had work the next day, and it was quicker for her to get to work from her house rather than mine. She used to stay over during the weekends or when our days off matched. Anyways, we were lying on my bed. She looked up and suddenly started shaking. Frozen stiff, but shaking. Staring, fixated at the ceiling. When I asked her what was wrong, as it was scaring me a little, she said she saw some kind of smoke appear in the corner of the ceiling, and then a face appeared through the ceiling staring at her for a few seconds before vanishing. She was as white as a sheet. The same feeling of dread came over me like when I heard the footsteps, and it worried me. This feeling of dread seemed more intense. We both decided to go downstairs and wait for her dad in the front room. While there, she just sat quietly until the sound of her dad's horn was heard. While alone, I closed the front room door and sat with the TV on. John came home about 10 minutes later, and those 10 minutes in the house alone were very intense for me. It felt like hours. Thankfully, John being back took my mind off of what had happened. I didn't mention anything to him at this point. It wasn't long before that I started to sense something around the house during my days off. I couldn't put my finger on what it was at first, but after about half a day, I picked up feelings of sadness and loneliness. A million miles away from the feeling of dread I usually got, which was a breath of fresh air. On a weekend off from work, I came downstairs to have some breakfast. I saw a small long bench with a young child sitting in the middle crying, with his hands clenched rubbing his eyes. Then it came to me. This was the feeling of sadness and loneliness I was having. He looked about 4 to 5 years old. That was the start of it all. Every time after that, I'd sense him running around the house, standing, or sitting down by me when I was playing my Xbox, standing by me watching TV, looking at the food I was eating, generally following me around the house. I even got that used to it that I turned CBeebies on in front of the room on occasion while I cleaned up or played my 360 upstairs. The feeling of dread was still looming around the house, but again, It was tolerable. It was faint. I kept that I could sense this little boy to myself. That was until my partner saw this little figure run past my door and then run into my room as if it was running at her, which made her jolt as if bracing for the impact. That's when I told her that I could sense him around. Before she could tell me how he looked, I quickly asked her if I could tell her instead, just so what I was seeing in my mind's eye was right, and I wasn't going mad. I've done a lot over the years, and I've been right every time. This little boy was wearing dirty black shoes, gray knee-length socks that were down by his ankles in a way that looked scruffy, a pair of dirty black shorts, a gray t-shirt, and a gray scuffy cap, and that the boy was very thin. My partner confirmed all of this with a startling stare and added that she felt sorry for him. She asked me if I'd seen anything else in the house. I told her I hadn't, but I get this feeling of dread through the whole house. She went quiet for a few seconds and then mentioned that when she was round on the second night of me living here, she'd gone for a cigarette by the open kitchen door which led to the garden. After about a minute, she felt someone gripe her shoulder, but when she turned, there was no one there, as we were all in the front room. And while smoking her cigarette, she constantly felt that someone was standing right up to her face. John was also interested in paranormal, and it wasn't long until me, my partner, John, and a few of his friends were using a makeshift Ouija board. Oh shit. The letters and numbers were all on separate pieces of paper, and the words yes and no were at each end of our Ouija board arrangement. We used an overturned glass to put our fingers on. We managed to contact this little boy, and we asked him to spell out his name. The pointer went to no. Then it clicked. He was too young to spell his name, and he didn't know the year he died either, or the day, or the month. It was a shame. As it came about, this spirit boy saw me as a big brother and saw my partner as a mother. Through asking him questions, we found out that the boy was left to die of starvation. His mother went out one day and didn't come back. It upset us all. I asked the boy if there was anybody he didn't like in the house. I asked this because of feeling of dread I kept having. I wanted to try and understand what and where this feeling of dread was coming from. I knew this feeling was coming from a male, but that was it. I got my answer. The glass moved to yes. I asked more questions. Can you point the glass to where this person is? No. Is the person you don't like in this room? No. Then I asked if the person was upstairs. Yes. Is he upstairs now? Yes. Does he scare you? Yes. Then I asked, there's a male upstairs, isn't there? No answer. So I asked the same question in a different way. Is there a nasty man upstairs? Yes. It clicked for both me and my partner. That face she saw through my bedroom ceiling was this male's. It wasn't good. I started to push more questions to understand what was going on and to confirm what I felt was going on. Does this man come out at night? Yes. And you hide from him? Yes. Is he angry a lot? Yes. He doesn't like me, does he? No. Because of my nan? Yes. This male presence didn't like John or my partner either. Does he know we are talking about him? Nothing. I asked again. Nothing. All a little freaked out, we decided to call it time as our food was cooked. John closed our session, thanking the spirits for our protection and their communication. This male presence became stronger. During the day, the house was filled with more dread, no matter where I went. At night, I kept the door to my room closed, and I could feel this male presence angrily walking around the house, especially walking past my room. I could feel him stopping outside my room and staring at me, as if the door wasn't there, as if he knew exactly where my head was and where I was sitting. This happened every night. At times, the feeling was so bad I wouldn't come out of my room to eat or drink. Only for the toilet would I leave the room, and then I'd make sure all the lights were on in the house from about 7 till I went to bed. Some nights, this male would spend the entire night just staring at me through the door. Those were the times I'd have an early night and want to go to sleep as fast as possible. When my partner stayed over, she'd go downstairs during the night to use the toilet and find the back room and kitchen lights on. All lights would be turned off when John was home and when my partner stayed over. Sometimes just the kitchen light or the back room light or the front light would be on. The one time the kitchen light came on its own as she walked to the light switch to switch it on. Another time she went downstairs to the toilet and she screamed. I ran downstairs to find her sitting on the bottom step. She told me she opened the door to see the kitchen light flickering on and off with a huge black shape in the middle. I shot into the middle room and the light was on, but no black shape. I stayed with her while she went to the toilet and we stayed awake that night. We were tired and thirsty, but too scared to do anything. This stuff was happening every other day now. On my day off, I'd avoid trying to go downstairs unless John was there. I'd get something from the chip shop and eat it on the way home. That way I could just go straight upstairs. I'd just also like to point out that a good chunk of all that I experienced happened while John was away. He was away a lot, sometimes with work and over times for breaks with a few friends. On top of everything that was going on, at the time I lived in Wolverhampton but worked in Perry Bar, which isn't far from Birmingham. The days were long. I was up at 5:30 every morning to get to work before 8, and I'd get home around 8 or 9. It was important that I had my sleep. What happened this one morning happened almost every morning after that until I felt the house. I woke up at 4:45 a.m. to my door wide open with that feeling of dread there. I just got up, closed it, and then went back to sleep, only to find that my door was wide open again when I woke up to my alarm. Still, I thought nothing of it. That was until I was being woken between 4:30 to 5 every morning I had to work. One morning, I awoke to someone breathing on my face. I shot up, but there was nothing but the feeling of dread. It was getting to me now. I wasn't sleeping right or living right. I decided to place a pair of my trainers against the door before I went to bed, and still my door would be wide open with a load of pressure and feeling of dread all over me, and I wouldn't be able to get back to sleep. I was getting more tired as the days went on. When I confronted John about all this, he told me that he was shocked. He told me he heard voices coming from the hallway while he's in bed, and there's been knocking on his bedroom door. He thought it was me messing with him, but when he opened his door, my door was shut, and there was no way I'd make it back to my room that quick without making a noise. He told me there was more whispering and knocking on his door when I wasn't there. It got to a point where when I had to go to bed when John wasn't there, I'd leave all the lights on and TV on all night in the house. If I had to go to the toilet, I'd wait until I was almost bursting to go, and as soon as I got home from work, I'd go straight upstairs and not move from my room. The night after night, I'd keep waking up and it was tiring me right out. That feeling of dread, it was like the presence was watching me sleep. It wasn't long after all this that I eventually moved house again to my aunt's. Everything there was calmer though. It was the amount of spirits in that house that freaked me out. The male presence in the house didn't like me at all. I felt that the spirit was unable to approach me. Mentally, as my nan was blocking him out, and instead he was trying to wear me down physically. For what purpose? I'll never know. And in ways, I'm glad I never will. I've never gone back to that house, and I doubt I ever will. I just feel bad for that little boy. I am fascinated by Ouija boards, but I'm not stupid enough to use one and call out any cucuys. No ma'am. I always said that I would like to observe a Ouija board session going on, but the cucuys gonna take me down, and I fucking know it, Anyways, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Truth and Culture, and be put on notifications so that you can be notified of upcoming episodes coming up, especially this month. And if you guys like it, it might be maybe a seasonal thing, and every month thing, and every other month thing, who knows. But anyways, love you guys so much. I hope you guys have a great month of October. I hope you guys have a wonderful Hollow My Ween, and I will see you later. Bye.